Hello, friends. Robert Pepin here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're talking about the spell Animate Dead.
Brains. This is the zombie spell. It's a minute cast time, 10-foot
Zombie
range.
spell.
It's the zombie spell, Bob.
All right.
Minute cast time, third level necromancy, 10-foot range, removal smiting material components, a drop of blood, a piece of flesh, and a pinch of bone dust. Which, how often did bone dust come up that it's like, I don't know, it feels like this constant reagent. I wasn't aware that bones were dusty. Anyway.
No, I mean, I imagine after they age enough, they become dry and brittle and,
You like
break. And
dust them?
Well, no, they snap and, the breaking part, crumbles into dust. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
what I imagined.
I always imagine like crypts as like damp, wet places, so I always have a hard time envisioning it being dusty. It just feels like mildewy and gross. But yeah, it doesn't matter.
We've been watching Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, so I'm always picturing dead bodies out in the desert.
Fair enough. Instantaneous effect. The spell creates an undead servant. Choose a pile of bones or a corpse of a medium or small humanoid within range. Your spell imbues the target with a foul mimicry of life, raising it as an undead creature. The target becomes a skeleton if you choose bones, or a zombie if you choose a corpse. The DM has the creature's game statistics, which is not always true, and we'll get to that. On each of your turns, you can use a bonus action to mentally command any creature you made with the spell if the creature is within 60 feet of you. If you control multiple creatures, you can command any or all of them at the same time, issuing the same command to each one. This means if you have all of them around you, you can say, great, use 6 zombies, bonus action, and attack that thing. You cannot say you 3 attack that thing, you think you attack the other thing. They all have to take whatever the same action is. You decide what action the creature takes and where it'll move during its next turn, or you can issue a general command such as guard up to the corridor. If you issue no commands, it only defends itself against hostile creatures. Once given the order, it will follow it until the task is complete. So if you say run around the earth, it will do everything in its power to run around the earth.
For 24 hours.
For 24 hours, and then some bad things start to happen. The creature is under your control for 24 hours, after which it stops obeying any command you've given it. To maintain the control over the creature for another 24 hours, you must cast the spell again on the creature again before the current 24-hour period ends. This use of the spell reasserts your control over up to 4 creatures you've animated with the spell, rather than animating new ones. This means for every 4 casts of Animate Dead, you can maintain control over... you needed to spend 4 spell slots initially to get those 4, but you only need 1 to maintain. So you can hypothetically, over a long period of time, get 4 times your 3rd level spell slots of regular zombies under your control. However, so let's say you're a 6th level character with 2 3rd level spell slots, you can hypothetically control 8. Now that takes a while, and this is a really unique spell. It also has a higher level that I should quickly touch on. Whenever you upcast the spell using a spell slot at 4th level or higher, you reanimate or reassert control over 2 additional undead creatures for each slot above 3rd. So notably, you can animate 3,
yes,
but it doesn't let you reassert control over 8. It lets you reassert control over 6, which means the numbers get a little bit like, okay, so I have to know what the base rate is and the scaling differences and all of that nonsense. Each of these creatures must come from a different corpse or pile of bones. This is another line of text that it has. So you can't,
that's fine.
1 pile of bones is 3 zombies.
Right.
Okay. Initially, Bob, do we want to dive into, is the spell good, or how do you actually play with this?
I just want to clear up a couple things first.
It's a great place to start.
So you can cast this as it doesn't limit you. Like you can cast this as many times as you have 3rd level slots.
Correct.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, now you were talking about reasserting control, getting more value for your money or whatever for your spell slots. Have you done the math on this?
Okay, there's great giant tables online that you can find. The gist of it is,
I'm just wondering how many can you be controlling at any one time?
A 5th level character at any one time can be controlling. It also depends on the quantity of long rests you're taking per day. So for 24 hours, at most, a 5th level character with 2 3rd level spell slots can reassert control over 16 undead. 4 3rd level spell slots, 2 per each long rest period, which will give you an 8-hour window to control all 16. That is not regularly going to be happening. 5th level characters aren't regularly going to be getting back-to-back long rests to reassert control over the zombies, nor are they going to have the initial 16 3rd level spell slots to invest, because it takes 1 at a time to make them. You need to spend 16 spell slots to get there in the first place. realistically using this is very different than the Munchkin-y, how can I get as
Yeah,
many
yeah.
zombies as humanly possible. Notably, on each upcast then, if we are doing the long rest thing, right, every bonus 3rd level spell slot gives you an extra 8 zombies, because again, it's 2 per day, because 2 casts per day over 2 long rests. So next level, getting an extra 3rd level spell slot, you go up to getting 8 extra. And then whenever you start getting the upcasting ones, it is additional 3rd level slots plus 2 per extra zombie. Per 2 per extra spell level above it. The math specifically on quantity of zombies ends up being a very high amount over 8 hours at a top tier level. You get hundreds. I would hazard it around hundreds of zombies as a 9th or as a 17th level character. You don't need hundreds of zombies as a 17th level character, and that's also eating 100% of your spell slots every single day.
Yeah.
So like you're doing nothing else, and zombies aren't that good. Is a big issue the spell has. Skeletons are a lot better actually, but zombies aren't that good.
Why are skeletons better?
They have ranged weapons. They can use
That's
short bows.
so weird. Why?
I know.
Why?
It's in their stat lock.
Yeah.
I don't argue these things. It's just the way it is. Okay, skeletons are proficient with short bows. It doesn't. If you were dead and never fired a bow, and you're brought back as a skeleton, you just know how this works, I guess, because they get +4 to hit and they only have +2 dex, which means they're proficient in them. So.
Whoa! You have flesh on your finger bones. You can't use a bow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Illegal. Zombies aren't proficient with short bows. Skeletons are, though. The big difference between the two, so there are also other things I'll cover quickly, but the generic humanoid, let's assume everything's just a humanoid zombie. So we're not going to take any races or species into account whenever we're doing this. We're going to say, when you animate a zombie, you get a human zombie. What does it do? Human zombies predominantly are sacks of hit points that run really slowly. They do a d6 +1 bludgeoning damage with a +3 to hit, which is pretty garbo, but they do have 22 HP. So these, building up 4 of these at once, you'll have 88 worth of hit points zombies to kind of throw around with. They also have undead fortitude, which means if they would die, they make a save, and sometimes they don't, which is pretty fine. You don't really necessarily care about that. I would much rather have the skeleton battery with, 80 over 320 ranges with +5s to hit. That seems, or sorry, +4s to hit, which is a lot better. So you can have like 4 skeletons behind you, making 4 extra range check rolls around. That seems like a lot better of a route to go, in my opinion. Like, you just, as a necromancer, you should pretty regularly be trying to get a skeleton, long rest with it, get a skeleton. It's actually more of get a skeleton, long rest with it, get a skeleton, long rest with them, get a skeleton, long rest with them, get a skeleton, long rest with them, because you only have 2 slots to work with at 5th level. You find out logistically doing it is kind of a giant hassle and takes a while to build up your undead army. At the same time, having 4 extra attack rolls from range every round is really good and is definitely worth the 3rd level spell slots you're spending on them to maintain them. The problem I have with it is, who wants to go through the hassle of having to maintain their character like this? What kind of player wants to sit down and go, all right, here's my daily maintenance that I'm doing every long rest that I'm announcing to the DM. Oftentimes your DM's going to be like, just don't tell me how you're doing it. Just make sure the slots line up, and I'm not going to ask questions. I don't have to figure that out either, because this is a fair bit of hassle to figure out specifically how you have to go about doing it. So I would make sure you have a very much locked down. Tell your DM, this is how I intend to be raising the spells. This is how the spell works. This is how long the durations are. This is when I'm casting to reassert control over that kind of stuff. Have all of that planned out. Make sure you do reassert control whenever you need to. Otherwise, bad things are going to happen. But for the most part, you can live a pretty happy necromancer fantasy, even at 5th level, by just using the 4 skeletons. Again, I would almost always recommend skeletons over zombies.
What reassert control or bad things happen? They don't just drop into a pile of bones?
Nope.
Oh. Fun times.
Yeah, the creature is under your control for 24 hours, after which it stops obeying any command you've given it. That doesn't mean anything else. It then tells you how to maintain control over it. But then you have to ask yourself the question, okay, in this world, are undead constructs, or are undead horrendous monsters with the aim of eating and ending all life? Which is normally the latter case. Normally the latter is undead are here to be evil and kill things and be free, or target practice for the good guys, right? Is to be, we can kill things without feeling bad about it, is what undead often are supposed to be doing. That means they're going to start eating brains if you don't reassert control over them. So you should make sure you can maintain this. And they have to be within 60 feet of you for that to happen, so.
They don't necessarily, they're not hostile to you necessarily.
No, they're just hostile.
Right. But this is a little bit different. We were recently talking about Conjure Elemental, where if you lose your concentration on that, the elemental is hostile to you. Now, I was suggesting it'd be fun to put them behind enemy lines, and whether or not they're hostile to you probably doesn't enter into it if they're already engaged in a fight. Now, with zombies, that's almost always going to be the case.
Yeah.
If they're indifferent to you and they just want to kill
everything,
any life they see.
Yeah, then, your life is exactly as valid to them to eat as everyone else's.
then that's good times.
Yeah. Unless they're against a construct or other undead, in which case they'll go, I don't want to eat these things. These things aren't alive and offending my existence. And then they'll turn around and try and eat you again. So there's still that little asterisk. Yeah. But for the most part, yeah, these are going to be more reliably tools of destruction. I actually think the spell tells a really great story as how necromancers sort of work. I actually think a lot of games, if they just ran their necromancers with these rules, would have a really fun time with it, because necromancers have to be afraid of their own subjects sometimes. If you're a classic necromancer and have a swarm of zombies that you're building up over time, right? Let's say you're only a 6th, 7th level character, you can still create them. You can still put them places, and you can reassert control over them later. But as long as you don't go near them and you just leave them locked in the cellar, they're not really an issue for you. Which leads to these really cool moments where you can have these evildoers that have these pools of zombies that they don't have finite control over. They can't send them out to do things all of the time, but they can lay in wait as traps in dungeons. They can guard corridors without having to have manual maintenance of them. You can do some pretty basic logistic stuff with this and create necromancers that do have swaths of minions at their disposal. They just can't always use the swaths of minions as they'd like. They have to be clever and consider their placements, consider where they're leaving them. Like you suggested, if you just leave them out in the farmsteads to go harass some villagers, that's a real way you can sort of assert dominance and be evil and grow your army by just letting the zombies go out. Once they've finished raising that one town set and meandered out to go to the next ward, you wander in, do some more resurrection, get some more zombies, send them off on their own directions. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can run the spell, just rules as written. I think that makes it really interesting.
All right, how does this compare to, let's say, Danse Macabre, however you pronounce that?
Dance Macabre is a spell that does the necromancer fantasy without all of the hullabaloo, for the most part, of needing to go through the bookkeeping. This spell asks you to have a pencil and a paper out that's tracking down what zombies have been summoned with which unanimated deads, that have asked you what groupings you have and what spells you're dedicating to what groups of zombies and skeletons, what ones get broken, what ones you need to replace, where you have to go find more corpses. This is a lot of bookkeeping. Dance Macabre is just, there's an undead bunch of bodies around us, they're all up and they're fighting for us. It feels more like a summon spell. Create Undead is in a similar world, where it's this, you get a summon, you get a thing, it's there now. Create Undead, I'm sorry, I meant Summon Undead, the one that gives you the undead body from Touch Colored of everything, not Create Undead. Create Undead is definitely the top in fantasy this, though, which we can touch on later if we want to, but I think that if you're like, oh my god, that sounds like so much work, I don't want to have to deal with this, Dance Macabre is absolutely the route I would recommend taking over this. It's a shame that it's higher level, but that is a way to do I've got a bunch of zombies that are actually good at attacking now, and they'll go do the attacking thing. Because one thing about these zombies is they suck. These zombies are awful. These skeletons are getting +4 to hit. The only reason they're good is when you have a lot of them, because then you're making a lot of attacks, and even with the bad modifiers, you're going to crit 1 in 20 times. So, like, every 5 rounds, you're getting a crit from a skeleton and a couple other little hits now and then. They're great at taking down little things off in the distance. They can be fun. Zombies are atrociously bad, though. Zombies are... You cannot expect them to hit regularly. They don't hit for that hard, and they die really, really easily, and you're not going to normally have them around you to, like, continually give new commands to, so... I think you're going to be really hard-pressed to do the zombie thing with this all that effectively. And Dance Macabre lets you do the zombie thing effectively because they got a much better modifier. They actually are a reasonable threat, where these are not reasonable threats.
Cool. Did you say you want to talk about Create Undead too, or?
Oh, we can. I'd rather go into instead.
Yeah.
There is... So, if you want the spell as a DM, if you want your players to really feel like they have a window, do some cool stuff with this. Conceivably, this reanimates the creature as a creature of the type that died, right? If you are a tiefling that die, and you are resurrected as a zombie, you still have tiefling horns. If you're a minotaur, for example, I think it's a better example. You're an undead minotaur, a zombie minotaur, or a skeletal minotaur. Those are technically different. In the monster manual, there are different stat blocks for ogre zombies. There are different stat blocks for regular zombies. Human zombies is basically what those are. You could get into the nitty-gritty as a DM to be, okay, what species stats carry into undeath and what don't? Are halflings still lucky when they're zombies? Are halflings still brave when they're zombies? Minotaurs still have horns. Can they still use their gore action? Or, there's specific things that'll happen across the different races and species in this game where you're going to have to ask some weird questions to say, can I keep X, Y, or Z trait? Now, I'm of the opinion zombies are bad enough that decorating them up with flavorful stuff from the species is really fun. it is more bookkeeping, but if you're using the spell anyway, you're probably into that. So I think there can be a fun element for your necromancers to try and like piece together their like some modular improvements to their army over time to be like, oh, we killed these 3 kinds of goblins. Great. I could use some sneaky, stealthy, stabby zombies that are smaller. At the very minimum, the size is going to be a thing you're going to want to care about, right? Kobolds are naturally smaller than humans. Kobold zombies and skeletons can fit into places that human skeletons and zombies cannot. And that's going to be some amount of advantage, something to think about whenever you're doing it. That's why whenever I said the DM has the creature's game statistics, it's kind of a lie, because the DM has to make up the game statistics for the zombies. Like, there aren't even dedicated rules in the monster manual to say, this is how you construct a zombie based off of other existing species. It just says figure it out. It says these are the zombie general traits. Here are 3 example stat blocks. Go nuts with it. So it is a little bit of a burden to put on your DM. At the same time, it can be really fun and rewarding to do that if your DM likes that kind of thing. So talk to them about it. I think it's a way to make the spell a lot cooler.
If you're going to be trying to maintain control of an army, you're already going to need to talk to the DM anyway. So this can be part of that conversation.
So I think if you're using this fairly, and by say fairly, I would say probably less than 12. If you have less than 12 undead at your disposal, I would say this is a thing you could reasonably expect to explain to your DMs to this is how the spell works, and have them come talk to you about addressing it after the fact. If you do intend to get a lot of things, then yeah, you absolutely should go talk to your DM and be like, I would like to make an army of 32 zombies. And they'll go, great, let's talk about this, because that's a lot to deal with. So, consider it.
I think the thing is, though, it's a lot to deal with if you're looking at it like at once. But if realistically, it's like the casting the spell every day for a year thing. That's not going to happen. No, that's going to happen in a block of time out of the game. But this, I'm picturing more happening during the game. You've got 6 zombies, and all right, you go on your little adventure, kill some more baddies. And okay, well, tonight you make these choices. Maybe I'm using some spells, or maybe I'm just going to use this because we got some extra bodies.
You definitely run into the situation as soon as you get like 5th level spell slots, though, where you can just go, oh, I could just take Animate Dead right now and just make 30 things. That's a thing you can do in the upper tiers, right? Whenever you're getting 5 undead per cast and you're getting 6, 7 casts, you start to be able to just spontaneously be like, hey DM, is there a crypt nearby? And they go, I don't know, why? And you go, because I'd like to get 40 servants right now, please. It'll feel less organic in those instances, and I think that's where you probably would be more willing to have the conversation. But if your DM is just like, you're scavenging, you're picking them up, you're like, I get my 1, I get my 1, I get my 1, and I keep reasserting control over the 3 of them, then it's going to be very, very fine and very fair. I would, again,
and they're not all going to survive.
That's 100% true.
And how recyclable are these?
I mean, people die all the time in D&D, so...
No, I'm saying, like, all right, you got your zombie, enemies kill the zombie. It's a dead body again.
I think I would consider that a corpse of an undead and no longer qualify. Is how I would DM that. So, like, for a rules as written perspective, I don't know. I think you're going to vary based off your DM, but I don't think it's unreasonable to ask if the undead is destroyed, they have to go get a new one, because the parts are damaged too much to be on repair. The thing can't hold itself together, right? There's enough sufficient damage on the body that it no longer can really sustain a useful animation. Is how I would rule that from the DM's perspective. Again, your mileage may vary though. Some DMs are gonna be like, yeah, sure, bring it right back up.
Yeah, I was thinking that for skeletons. I mean, they're just bones. Any damage is going to be destroying those bones. But for zombies, I mean, stab. There's still a form.
But yeah, for our burgeoning necromancers out there, Necromancy 101, skeletons are better than zombies, and having a battery of 4 skeleton archers with you all the time is really, really good. And it's absolutely worth your third level spell slots to consider doing it. So I would recommend it.
Wow. Now, back in the beginning of this, you said, do you want to discuss this first or this first? Did we cover both?
We covered everything.
Okay,
we covered. You asked all the rules questions that I wanted to touch on, and we touched on basically all of the other elements of is the spell good or not. I think the spell is pretty excellent. I think it's better as a wizard spell than a cleric spell, but only marginally so, just because wizards tend to embody that fantasy better. The necromancer class doesn't really care about undead all that much, less than I wish it did. I think that subclass definitely needs a revision in the coming editions. I also think there needs to be a lower level version of this so they can start out doing summon undead buddy as a first level spell, something I'd like to see, where you get a skeleton, and that's just your concentration slot. It lasts an hour, collapse back, no pile of bones when you're done with it. You can carry it around in your backpack. I think that's not unreasonable for a necromancer to get out the gate, and it's kind of what it needs to give a lot of players the feeling of necromancer. Oftentimes, Animate Dead feels like, oh, this is finally I can play the Necromancer fantasy. It just doesn't happen until 5th level, so you've been dawdling around for 4 levels going, I guess I cast in Veneration? Nope, no, it's not that one. I guess I cast not Vampiric Touch. Chill Touch. Like I'm struggling to come up with even basics. Ray of Sickness. There we go. That's how you get to feel like a Necromancer. No, not really. I wish the spell was low level, but still, if you get to 5th level, it is a real big payoff. It'll actually let you start playing your character the way you want to.
All right, you got a rating?
I think this is a 4. I think this is a deceptively strong, specifically at 5th level or whenever Munchkin to hell. Those are sort of the 2 windows where I see it being good. I think once you get to like around the mid tier, you're going to start facing against enemies that have larger areas of area of effect damage, and maintaining it does become a larger and larger cost. But I think when played fairly, it still feels very good. If you've got 4 to 8 skeleton archers under your disposal a turn, even though they're not hitting that often, they're adding a lot of pressure. They're adding just a lot of extra threats to push things out. You're gonna just start going to every local woodsmith and be like, I'd like as many bows as you sell, please. And they go, well, we got 6 in the back. No. I want as many bows as you're able to sell, please. We leave town in a week. Just give me them all. And you'll just have a bunch of skeleton archer bows lying in the back of your cart for whenever they initially get incinerated or whatever, because having a battery of archers is very powerful. It also gets better if you talk to your team about the different species and race stuff, but at its base level, you kind of have to, you can get a pretty fun, fair stuff out of it. When Munchkin to hell to get 100 giant billion zombies, you lose to a lot of other big Munchkin-y stuff that's, giant swaths of damage, but it's still, 10,000 attack rolls is pretty sweet still.
Yeah, I'm tempted to give it a 5, and I guess I would give it a 5 for for the Necromancer who wants to do this. Then this is it. This is all you got.
It's all you got.
Not all you got, but it's the big
basically
one.
all you got.
Yeah.
I will say this: it's all you got, but it is a genuinely great way to deliver the fantasy if you buy in and understand conceptually all of how this works, and you play by its rules, and you do it meticulously and consistently, and you accept that you have to build up over time. I think you can have a lot of fun with this. If you come into this saying, I want to control like 6-8 zombies right now, that's not what the spell does. The spell lets you start doing the necromancy thing. It doesn't immediately make you a full-blown, under your control, a whole bunch of swaths of monsters necromancer.
All right, yeah. Generally, I guess 4 for dedicated Necromancer, 5.
It's mandatory.
Yeah.
This is the Necromancer spell.
All right. Well, that
Necromancy is the best romancy, as the saying goes.
Necrophilia is the best Ophelia.
Is it? Is it fun?
I had to say it.
I'm not sure you did, but here we are.
All right, here we are. All right, that was Animate Dead. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. Let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.